these are better.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Sweet. I'm waiting for County Attorney Joyce, and we have a few minutes. I see you're on here, but she hasn't popped up yet. Guess I need to wait for Michelle also. There's Michelle. Commissioner Mankins, did you bring snacks for everyone?
Yes, I did, Chairman Anderson. Come on over.
Thank you. I'm still waiting for Josh O'Neill to bring me burritos one of these nights.
I sit right next to them and I'm still waiting for that too. So once we get back to in person.
Maybe. Hello, County Attorney Joyce. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, it's 7 o'clock or 1 minute till, so I guess 15 seconds, I'll start the meeting. I'll call the Judiciary Committee meeting of January 27th, 2021 to order. It looks like all people are present and accounted for. Thank you very much, Commissioner Fredrickson, for joining us today. First item on the agenda is communication 2020-503. Dan Olson, Commissioner, District 5, requesting Council of Commissioners to address the following problem with the Butte-Silver Ordinance 6.16-livestock and domesticated hoofed animals as currently written is unenforceable by BSB and does not interface seamlessly with MC 81-4-201, 81-4-401 to allow the state to provide enforcement. We had quite a bit of discussion on this last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess, not last week. I did talk to Commissioner Olson a little bit through email. He sent me a pile of stuff to read, a lot of which, some of which I got to, a lot of which I have yet to get a hold of. Commissioner Fortune, have you had a chance to peruse or talk to any of the parties involved with this, being as it is in your district? I'll give you a first go round on this.
No, I haven't. I guess nobody's reached out to me either, so I guess I don't have any input here.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment or questions or concerns about what we discussed last week, or anything that anybody else wants to bring up on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I just want to point out to the committee that I'm not sure that I agree with Commissioner Olson's characterization in his communication. These are two different processes. As indicated before, the HERD district is something that is initiated by people that want to create such a district, and they have to prepare a petition, and they would get this governing body to approve that petition. If they had, I think 55% of the people that want to create the HERD district agree to that, and I think 25% of them have to own residential property, or there has to be 75% of the owners. But it's, you know, a process that's initiated by residents. They still have an obligation under both the statutes regarding HERD districts and under other livestock statutes to comply with open range laws, and they have to have a fence that's, and there's requirements on the type of fence you have, it has to be sturdy enough, and I think they're supposed to, anyway, the statute kind of lays out what is an adequate fence. And then if they do create a herd district and somebody allows their commonly domesticated livestock to run at large in that district, then there are criminal penalties. And our office could file a criminal complaint as a misdemeanor, just like we do with other violation of state laws. Our local ordinance is has a boundary defined that precludes commonly domesticated hoofed animals from running at large in that area. And I think the discussion last time was whether or not the intent of the ordinance was for Butte-Silver Bow to be able to pick up those types of animals on private property, or if we believe the intent was needed to be maybe clarified to say that it's really running at large on publicly owned property. So, I mean, to say that the two, don't work seamlessly together, they're just two different procedures. And I think this committee's decision, I guess, is whether or not they believe that the ordinance needs to be clarified to say that the responsibility of the animal control department is to impound animals that are running within that boundary if it's publicly owned property and not just any property. So that if it's on private property, people have their own remedies to either create a herd district or to be able to sue the owner of the animal that allowed them to run at large, assuming that they have adequately fenced out as they're required to do under the open range.
Thank you. Mr. Randall, do you have anything to add tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Judiciary. I don't have anything to add unless you want me to go over, what we discussed last week. I think that we have a couple options, or probably a few. One is that these folks that live out there can surely get together and discuss a herd district. Again, I always felt that the best option would probably be to clean up the ordinance a little bit. So I guess what is this body looking at? What direction is Judiciary thinking? Or does anyone have any thoughts?
Personally, I'm going to start with myself first on that matter. Personally, I don't really believe that we have the resources available or the means necessary really to go around picking up cattle or horses or other livestock, housing them, and waiting for the owners to pick them up and feed them and take care of them. I know it's quite a bit of work. Growing up on a ranch and having done that for quite some time, it's just something that I think is really not something that I would expect our local government to do. The idea of bringing forth suit and allowing the owners to do that, I think, as county attorney said, is a good idea, and let them kind of deal with it. The herd district and putting it back into the folks' hands up there who live in these areas is probably, I would say, the best idea, and let them report on what they want to see happen with this. As far as I know, if they want us to police this and go around rounding up cattle every night or when somebody's cattle get loose, I just don't see where that's something that your department's really going to be able to adequately do. Am I right in that assumption that it would just place too big of a burden on your group?
Mr. Chairman, members of Judiciary, I think that it would be difficult to do that type of work. We're not trained specifically in that. We do traffic control when animals are on the public right of way, which we're comfortable with. Again, I never felt the intent of the ordinance was to go on people's property, but as County Attorney Joyce has stated, if I believe that, then we do have some work to do on the ordinance. We have resources in place to take care of animals that would maybe be on the right of way. We have mechanisms in place in the ordinance if there's damage to property. I just think that a lot of what we're talking about is probably something that we shouldn't be involved in, and it's probably more between two folks going to court, and I feel that we can obviously do some work to the ordinance, like I've stated, or the group out there can take care of it on their own by creating a herd district. But there are rules that go with a herd district. So that's my suggestions, is to get with the county attorney and clean up the ordinance, which I don't think would be difficult. I think that we keep what we have in the ordinance that can protect these folks and their property. We have resources in place if we have cattle again or horses to bring to a sheltered area. So we've done this in the past and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Callahan, you had your hand up a moment ago. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, I don't think anybody on this committee has really seen any of the comments and emails and stuff that Commissioner Olson had gotten from these neighbors that have had this issue. So I don't really think that we should be making any decisions until we hear from these people. I think they would love to come and talk to this committee and explain what the issues have been through the years. Just to comment on Chairman's comment, that is a neighborhood up there. And if those folks came and run those cows into your neighborhood, what would you do to handle it? They expect the same thing. They want something done. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, the majority of the people that have livestock and horses and stuff, you call them up, they go take care of the problem, and it's a done deal. What happened up in that area was the rancher just refused to do anything with them. So, in the right-of-ways, get across the right-of-ways to get to these people's properties. They are in the right-of-ways. And then they cross the right-of-way and get into these people's properties. So I think when I talked to Commissioner Olson the other day, he said he would like to contact those people, have them come contact us, get a hold of us, come to a meeting, and explain to everybody what they're dealing with. And until we all hear that, it's pretty hard for any of us to really make a decision, is my suggestion. But somebody else has got a comment, I'm more than glad to listen.
Commissioner Sorich, and then Mr. Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my thought, and Mr. Randall, you're absolutely right. Butte-Silver doesn't have the resources or the to go out there and run stray cattle or stray livestock or whatever. I guess my thoughts are, though, what can we do to make it a deterrent to not allow these people, so if their animals do get loose, can we set a monetary fine? Or can we do, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm thinking out, not necessarily go out there and, confiscate a cow that's running wild down the street. But if, you should happen to know who the owner is, could you maybe put a fine on the person? Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sorich, Commissioner Callahan, Judiciary Committee. There are remedies in the ordinance to take care of damaged property. And as far as we live in a rural area and we have open range laws, these folks can definitely fence these cattle out. It has to be an appropriate fence, and there are some different issues with that, but we can't solve every problem. As far as Commissioner Olson or the Dan Olson, you know, this has now been at Judiciary or on the council agenda for a month or so. So I would have assumed that he allowed people to, or told people that we were doing this. I hate continuing to push things down the road. You know, I'm the director of the department. I think that I know I know what works and what doesn't. And unfortunately, we can't solve every problem. But what we can do is enforce what we have on the books, clean it up. I don't believe that we should be in the cattle business, regardless of what folks say. And I understand it's a neighborhood, but they do live out in an area like that, and we do have protections for them. I think that we're really looking at changing how we do business for one area. And I'm not saying that area is not important. I believe it is. But let's look at the big picture. You know, we have an area that, you know, goes from what, you know, Melrose or whatever to, you know, up into Walkerville or whatever it is. And we don't have a ton of problem. Do we have cattle on the road? Absolutely. Are we going to have cattle on the road or cows or horses if we change the ordinance? Absolutely. We know how to deal with it. We're talking about a specific issue, and I don't think that we should jump and change everything for one specific issue, because that's what we're doing. So, you know, we can't be the be all end all, and some things are civil and they should be. And the other things, like Commissioner Sorich stated, can we give them a fine? Can we? Yeah, we have tools in the ordinance to protect their properties, and we will surely enforce that, which we have in the past. So I think we need to take a step back a little bit and think about what we're doing. If you want to listen to all the folks, that's great. I think that, you know, public comment is always good, but I really hope that we consider what we're trying to do here and where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Commissioner Callahan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate, until you know the problem, how do you fix it? You know, Mr. Randall, you say we fixed it in the past, we've dealt with it in the past, but from what I understand, these people are complaining that we haven't dealt with it. And, you know, John, Mr. Commissioner Sorich's comment, well, we're not in the business. I know our former chief executive, Palmer, came home for vacation last year, and his yard was trashed, and he lives on Main Street. So, I mean, you can say those people's problem means somebody else's problem, but one day it might be. I think what these people are asking for is some kind of way that they can take care of the problem when it occurs.
Anything else from
Yeah.
anybody? Please, Mr. Randall.
Yeah, Commissioner Callahan and Chairman Anderson, I just disagree with you, Commissioner Callahan. And if we don't know what the problem is yet, we should have known by tonight. And I'm telling you what the problem is. The problem is that we had some issues out in one area. I believe that we've taken care of it. We had one poor property owner that really wasn't doing the right thing. We had a pretty good conversation with him. There has been no issue since. Now, has this happened in other places? It probably has. But again, we have teeth in our ordinance to take care of that. If someone has it happen to their yard and we don't know about it, really nothing we can do about it. But if someone contacts us, we'll surely investigate it. If we see animals on the right of way, which I believe was the intent of the ordinance, and we've always responded appropriately, no matter what time of the night or early morning or 3 a.m, we've taken care of it. So I think that, you know, I'm surely willing to listen to anyone, but I think you have to, again, look at the big picture. If you don't know what the problem is, maybe find out. I know what the problem is. And I think that we can take care of it by amending some ordinance, which I think that we should, and move from there. So if there's anything else or any other questions, I guess I've been doing this for many years. I know what the issue is, and I've dealt with this specific problem, and I know what the issue is. If you folks don't, I don't know what to say to that.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Chairman Anderson and Director Randall and everybody else on here. Director Randall, I know that you've said that you have the answers, and before that, you said to clean up the ordinance. And I put a couple bullets down on the piece of paper here that I'm writing on and taking notes. What would be your suggestion to clean up the ordinance then with your directive in doing this?
Mr. Randall.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
don't think you want to be a commissioner.
No, I don't.
I don't blame you.
No, I don't. Chairman Anderson and Commissioner Mankins, I think that what we need to do is what I felt always was the intention or the intent of the ordinance was that we deal with domesticated animals or domestic animals on public right-of-ways. And again, if they get on property, we have teeth in the ordinance that can take care of property damage and things like that. I think that it's a real easy fix. I think it will clear things up in everyone's mind. I think that we continue to do what we've done in the past and move forward. That's what I believe is the fix. If you remember right, 2 weeks ago, I said what this body is trying to do is probably not going to help these folks that have the cattle in their yard unless we do we look at removing animals that domesticated animals that get in the yards, and I just don't feel that that's our job and it's our business. I don't think that we would ever have the resources to do it, and I think that we have to look at where we live, why people move out into these areas. I think that you're looking at a lot of different issues that I think either need to really be thought out better or more closely, or we do what we should and clean the ordinance up, make it more specific to public right-of-ways, which is public safety. We have the ordinance in place that can take care of property damage, and I think that we take care of everyone's needs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Randall. I guess I have a question for you in that regard, County Attorney. What can we do to this ordinance to put in a more punitive aspect for somebody who is acting in bad faith, i.e. not keeping their fences up, just allowing their cattle and livestock to run wild and everything? Is there a way to put in anything with that, with some teeth? Because to me, it sounds like that's our biggest problem, was a specific owner.
Mr. Chairman, the ordinance as written does have it does constitute a misdemeanor, and there are fines attached to it. And then, as Mr. Randall indicated, there is an impoundment procedure, and they can be required to pay for damage. So the ordinance, as written, does already kind of address, violations, and there is punishment attached to it. I think what Mr. Randall's trying to say is this ordinance intended for Butte-Silver to go onto private property when one private property owner allows their commonly domesticated hoofed animals to get out and break through a fence of another private property owner? Is it Butte-Silver responsibility under this ordinance to impound those animals? Or is our ordinance more intended for if those animals got on to a public right-of-way or some kind of public property, that it's our obligation to impound those animals under that instance? And I think that the people that live out there or that have livestock and or are required to comply with the open range laws and make sure that their fences are adequate, then the problem doesn't happen all that often. You've got to make sure that your fence is sturdy enough so that you have complied with your obligation under the open range laws so that the livestock can't get through. But if they do get through, I guess the question is the ordinance intended for the local government to expend resources to pick up animals that are going from one person's private property to another person's private property? Or is the ordinance intent more to pick up those animals that are running at large that are on public property? And that's, I think what he's saying is, if the ordinance isn't clear enough that it's public property that we're regulating, then that could be something that could be addressed by an ordinance amendment. When this issue first started, I think the people that were making complaints were initially thought that a herd district had already been established, and were coming to Butte-Silver Bow to say that we should be charging people for, violating, allowing their animals to run at large in a herd district. And then they were advised that we don't have a herd district. And I know that Mr. Randall's people met with a couple of the people that were complaining. And like he said, there hasn't been other issues since then. But again, I think this committee has to decide whether or not this is an issue that needs to be addressed in terms of making it clear to the public that what the local government's responsibility is maybe to just be able to pick up animals that are on public property, and it is a civil issue or the ability of the people to form their own herd district. And then there's a criminal violation if there is a herd district and a property owner allows his animals to violate by letting them run at large in a herd district.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Commissioner Search, you had your hand up. And we have about 1 minute left, so please make it quick.
I'm just going to say, why don't we just hold this for 2 more weeks until we, I'm all agreeing. Maybe we can clean up the ordinance and see what we have to do. Why don't we hold this for 2 more weeks for further discussion? Because we do got to get out of here and onto the next meeting.
I would concur with that. We will hold this for another 2 weeks, and we will have a resolution in 2 weeks to this. I encourage anyone who does have questions to reach out to Mr. Olson or these landowners, and I will try to reach out to them again and hopefully come up with an opportunity to talk to them. And if they want to address this body, we can do so next week. We will hold this. Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Motion for adjournment. Is there a second? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. We'll be back online in about 3 minutes.